On Wednesday, people came into the sanctuary, and the ministers had a concoction made from the ashes of the palm leaves from last Palm Sunday, mixed with oil, and we would smudge people's forehead in the sign of a cross, thus recreating an ancient ritual from 6th century Gaul. And each time I did that, I would say to the person, "O mortal, remember you came from dust, and to dust you shall return. But today you live. So go forth and live fully with the sign of God's love." Now, it could seem pretty irrelevant to perform ancient rituals in our time. At the very least, it seems super anachronistic, beside the point. But I think that ancient ritual becomes a protest. To do a ritual filled with symbolic meaning in a time that lacks meaning and is chaotic, it's an act of resistance. To remember humbly our mortality is also to say every human organization and human project and human institution will become dust. It's an act of resistance to remind ourselves that even when something seems fearsome, like a demagogue like Putin, that it will become dust. The only thing that has a chance for eternity is love. The only thing. That ritual was an act of resistance. It was badass. It was kick-ass. And it began the season of Lent. That's 40 days where we follow Jesus to the cross, where in an act of pure sacrificial love, he would engage in no violence, not even to self-defend. He'd rather die than hurt anyone. That's an act of resistance. In our world, to enter this season of Lent, in our world where we think human coercion and power and force and violence is how you get things done, to walk with him to the cross is a protest. And it's during Lent that we will read the ancient scriptures and immerse ourselves in the wisdom of the ancestors. Well, I think that's an act of resistance as well. In our day of Twitter feeds and Reddit threads and the superficiality of social media all around us, to go deep into the wisdom texts. It's an act of resistance. Today, we will reside deeply in Deuteronomy, the speeches of Moses to the encampment at Moab. And we will work our way up into the Psalm. And we will work our way up into the Gospel of Luke. Oh, these texts, they offer a peacefulness. They will offer a hope if you but listen.
When you have come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance to possess, and you possess it and settle it, you shall take some of the first of all the fruit of the ground, which you harvest from the land, that the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall put it in a basket, and go to the place that the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name. You shall go to the priest who is in the office at that time and say to him, 'Today I declare to the Lord your God that I have come into the land that the Lord swore to our ancestor to give us.' When the priest takes the basket from your hand and sets it down before the altar of the Lord your God, you shall make this response before the Lord your God. A wandering Aramaean was my ancestor. He went down into Egypt and lived there as an alien, few in number. And there he became a great nation, mighty and populous. When the Egyptians treated us harshly and afflicted us by imposing hard labor on us, we cried to the Lord, the God of our ancestors. The Lord heard our voice and saw our affliction, our toil, and our oppression. The Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, with a terrifying display of power and with signs and wonders. And he brought us into this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. So now I bring the first of the fruit of the ground that you, O Lord, have given me. You shall set it down before the Lord your God and bow before the Lord your God. Then you, together with the Levites and the aliens who reside among you, shall celebrate with all the bounty that the Lord your God has given to you and to your house.
When I looked at that text in Deuteronomy this week, I was reminded of Lakota Sioux spirituality. And then when I looked at the Psalm, I was reminded of Buddhist teaching. And then when I looked at the Gospel of Luke, I was reminded of ancient Greek religion and the Homeric epics. So I decided to title my sermon, Homer, Moses, Buddha, Sitting Bull, and Jesus Meet for Coffee. And when I titled it that, it sent me on a reverie. I began to wonder, what would Jesus order at Starbucks? It really got me going. You've seen those bracelets, what would Jesus do? I began to think, what would Jesus order? I know that Homer, well, like Sitting Bull would just order a drip coffee because that's real and authentic. But what would I know that Homer would order a nitro because that sounds epic, doesn't it? But what would Jesus order? I know the Buddha would order decaf because he's got to meditate and you don't want to be too amped that day. What would Jesus order? I know it wouldn't be a foo-foo drink like a frappuccino, but what would he order? I know Moses wouldn't order anything. He brew it himself. Hebrew, get it? Hebrew. But what would Jesus order? I finally decided Jesus would order a double shot espresso, straight up. Because when he was throwing over those tables at the temple, he looked way over-caffeinated to me, okay? I also could imagine when Jesus orders the double espresso and a chocolate chip cookie and then sees the bill for $28, he would start to throw the tables over at Starbucks. I heard these other spiritualities in the text, and you've heard from me plenty times that I love the religions of the world. And you've heard me say many times that I think truth meanders through the great religions in this beautiful way. I've never understood why sometimes Christians think they have to say we're the only true religion. Oh, God's truth can find many forms. Why would we argue about being the best? Do you remember in Matthew chapter 10 when the disciples began to argue about who was the greatest? How mad that made Jesus? But it's like we argue that we're the greatest now. And I love other religions, but I'm not really so much saying that all religions are true. I'm saying there is truth in all religions. And if you follow that, we have to acknowledge that Christianity is not all true. You know that, right? Christianity is not all true. It's filled also with human prejudice and discrimination. You have to follow the truth in Christianity. I'm not being radical saying that. We already know we don't worship Christianity. We worship God, right? We don't become disciples to Christianity. We're disciples to Christ. So we follow Christ through our own tradition and let Him lead us to the truth. You know when you see the untruth in the Christian religion, when you hear people being put down or people being oppressed, you know it's not true when Christianity says it's wrong to be gay or that women shouldn't be priests or ministers or whenever religion exerts its human discriminations and prejudices. You know this. But let's follow the truth. I heard in Deuteronomy the sound of the Lakota Sioux when Moses is telling his people, remember your ancestors. Did you hear him? He said, every time you make an offering, recite this honoring of the ancestors. My ancestor was a wandering Aramaean. He's speaking of Jacob, who came down into Egypt and became a mighty nation. But then they became oppressed and subjugated. And then the story towards freedom. Recite this story, remember the ancestors. When I studied with a Lakota Sioux medicine man, he had me constantly giving thanks to the ancestors. When we were performing rituals for a month, and I studied with this Sioux medicine man, as we did the rituals, he would always have me thanking the ancestors and reciting the ancient stories. Not so much to honor those who are past, but to also reclaim who we are now. Remember the ancestors. When I hear Moses say, my ancestor was a wandering Aramaean, we had become a mighty nation. But, I'm hearing again the ghost dance. Do you remember the ghost dance of the Plains Indians? Do you remember? In 1889, Wovoka, a Native American religious leader in Nevada, had a vision of the Great Spirit, this supreme being that was calling again for the ghost dance ritual to be enacted. And they thought if they did the ghost dance and they remembered the ancestors, the buffalo would become plentiful again and the white man would leave and they would be at peace if they did the ghost dance and remembered. That in 1890, that spread to the plains. The Lakota Sioux and the Plains Indians of Nebraska and Oklahoma and Texas and Kansas began to do the ghost dance again, praying that things would be peaceful and the white man would leave. Well, the reservation officials became very nervous when they heard the ghost dance and saw Sitting Bull rallying his tribe to do the ghost dance again. They thought it was a declaration of war. It wasn't. It was remembering their ancestors. But those reservation officials called the U.S. military, and we sent the 7th Cavalry, and you remember. We massacred them at the Wounded Knee because they were doing the ghost dance, trying to remember their ancestors and praying for peace. There is a trail of tears throughout all of history, and there is a trail of tears that is happening right now all over the world, in the Ukraine and other places. People wanting freedom. Let's turn to Psalm 90, our refuge, Psalm 91.
You who live in the shelter of the Most High, who abide in the shadow of the Almighty, I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Because you have made the Lord your refuge, the Most High your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, no scourge come near your tent, for God will command his angels concerning you, to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent you will trample under your foot. Those who love me I will deliver. I will protect those who know my name. When they call to me, I will answer them. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue them and honor them. With long life, I will satisfy them and show them my salvation.
Our refuge is in God. I was reminded that Buddhists speak of their refuge in the three jewels. The refuge they take in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, the teaching, and the community. If you gather with Buddhists, they often recite this in a ritualistic way. My refuge is in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. I say a second time, my refuge, and they repeat. In Buddhist spirituality, they are trying to create a type of consciousness that can make you impervious to suffering. If you can create a type of consciousness, in the Four Noble Truths, they believe that life is so difficult and frustrating and hard, and life is suffering because of our desires, because we seek after so much. And this creates all this dissatisfaction. They believe all things are transient, everything is changing, but when we try to hold on to things and we clamp down too tightly on life, we suffer. And so they try to create this consciousness of letting go, setting desires aside, and they begin to live the Eightfold Path of right action, compassion. They believe if you can create this consciousness, you can escape the suffering around you. Nothing could hurt you. They say that, unfortunately, we fall into the comparison mind. What happens is, every day you're comparing yourself to others and you feel less, and it's frustrating. You're constantly seeing if you measure up to the people around you, this comparison mind. But if you can let that go. Oh, in America, we have the Holy Trinity. Smart, rich, and talented. And you'll see people around you that look like they possess the Trinity. And you'll wonder if you measure up. And we suffer. You need not measure yourself against anyone if you can create this consciousness. And then as the Buddhists take hold of what is good and compassionate, they understand that nothing Nothing can touch that consciousness you now have. Oh, the world can attack your body. The world can put you in harm's way, your body, but nothing can touch the consciousness you possess. Nothing. And so that really you have only one thing to defend in this world, only one: your goodness, your virtues, your consciousness of love. It's the only thing you have to protect. And then as I looked at Luke, I heard the ancient epics, the Iliad, the Odyssey.
Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit in the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing at all during those days, and when they were over, he was famished. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread."
Jesus entered the wilderness. He went from home to the unknown and faced challenges, tests. You heard the first one from the devil. But he was able to pass those tests, 3, and then come back to us wiser and ready to serve. Do you know, that is precisely the Homeric template. In Homer's epics, it's called the hero's journey. And Odysseus and others, they must leave their home and enter the unknown, and they face tests, and they often come in 3s. But if they can overcome those challenges and return, they are wiser. They are the Homeric hero. It's the template of our lives, yours too. You know this. You're facing many challenges in life all the time. And you're entering into new things that are unknown to you all the time. But if you can withstand that, you can bring a deeper wisdom and strength. Oh, you need to know you're on the hero's journey. If you have ever given birth to a baby, you're a hero. Think of that challenge. If you've given birth to a baby, you're a Marine. Booyah! I mean, think of the challenges you faced and can overcome. Or if you've been a father and were a stalwart and consistent presence for a child over years, you're a hero. Over years. Oh, we need to remember we're on that heroic quest. If you've ever held a job, do you understand what it is to hold a job over time? All the complexities you've dealt with, all the challenges, and you've held on to that. You're a hero. A hero. I know in our time it's very important for people to talk about being a victim, and I understand why, for justice. But we don't want to fall too deeply into only the victim metaphor, because when you face those challenges, you become a hero. Oh, what people have faced. They're heroes. So Moses and Sitting Bull and Homer and the Buddha and Jesus, they're sitting at that table at Starbucks. And they've been enjoying one another. And they've been enjoying the drinks they ordered. And then finally Buddha says, it's time for cake pops. Cake pops. Have you ever had one of those at Starbucks? And so the Buddha hands around cake pops to everyone. And they begin to laugh, and they're enjoying each other so much, and they begin to realize there is a peace that meanders through all their traditions. There is a love, and they begin to just revel and take joy in the love that is possible, the peace that we can claim. Cake pops. Take hold of the peace, the love.